This is Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry, and I am your host, Ben Cross. Today we have a special edition, some kind of breaking news that we didn't want to wait until next week. We wanted to bring it to you today. So I want to thank our special guest today, Jon Minor, president of Apple Moving and Storage. How are you today, Jon?
I'm doing great, Ben. Thanks for having me.
And where in the world are you right now, Jon?
I am in Austin, Texas. My
Okay.
hometown, Puget Sound.
Beautiful. I love Austin. Austin is an amazing town.
Yeah.
Um,
Steve, we were trying to have the dispatchers convention, but because of all this mess, we had to cancel it.
did not is it postponed or is it full on canceled?
It's canceled for now. We'll see what happens. I think there's so
Okay.
much uncertainty that we didn't know what to do.
Now, for those of you who don't know who are watching this, whether you're in relocation or you're in the moving business, Dispatchers Convention, I like to say, is the best kept secret of the moving business. A lot of people still don't know about it. It's a convention that's held once a year. It's sponsored by a moving company in that city, and it's put on for the operations people and the owners of moving companies and agencies. And it's kind of where tonnage is kind of. How would you describe it, Jon, for people that haven't
I
been
would
to
say
one?
it's a big open networking event that is not probably spearheaded by any one organization, right? It's very neutral, and it's the best place really to come and meet people, and just everybody's on a level playing field, just trying to network and get to know one another.
Yeah, and it's always a blast. And I'm pulling up on LinkedIn here to see. And everybody, if you're watching on LinkedIn right now, go ahead and drop a comment. Let us know where you're coming to us from, where what company you work for. Put something in the comments. We're going to be giving some shout outs here. Also, hit that like button, hit that little celebration, love, thought provoking button over there. I don't even know what these are called. I should know probably what these emojis are called by now, right? I never know. It's always the first time I've done this whenever I do this.
There
So
you go.
go ahead and hit that button. Let people know you're watching. We appreciate it. And comments are slow to load right now, so I will get to you. And also, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, please go ahead and like and follow Love and Relo on Facebook. You can just search for Love and Relo, or it's facebook.com/Love and Relo, or on YouTube, same thing. Go to it, follow it, subscribe to it. Got over 100 followers now on YouTube and over 200 on Facebook. So thanks to everybody. And also, I can take your comments and show them, like my great friend Georgia, who gives a shout out. Hi, Ben and Jon. Hope all is well with you. And we've got some really breaking news today, so I'm glad you all checked it out. And I'm also going to bring on another friend right now, Oded Carmi, president of DN Van Lines in Boston and friend of the show. How's it going, Oded?
Hi, Ben. Hi, Jon.
Hey, Oded, how are you, sir?
Great.
Fantastic. So today's topic is the privatization of military moving. For those of you who don't know, there is a global household goods contract that is currently in the process of being awarded, kind of, sort of, right? We have a deadline coming up soon. When is that supposed to be awarded?
So the last that I've heard is that it was going to be the end of this month. I don't know that there's a firm concrete date. There's been some other things moving around, but I think that all along they've been saying that our schedule has not been adjusted with all the different things that are going on. So if that holds true, then possibly the end of this month.
Ben, you still there, buddy?
Ben may have frozen.
Well, I believe the official date is May 24th. Isn't that, Jon, right now what the current date is?
I don't know. I don't know if it got adjusted slightly, but I've heard 24th to the 30th, something similar to that. I don't know for sure. Yeah.
So I guess I'll take Ben's role here and start hosting this until he comes back. So we're obviously here to talk a little bit about the petition to stop the privatization or the monopolization of the global household goods, market, or I guess the global household goods contract. I'll share this with you, but you start first. What's your involvement with it?
So I agree with it. I think I'm one like-minded TSP and moving company that feels like now we have a direct relationship and control of our own moving company with the. There he is. Yeah, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Yeah,
You're muted,
go
man.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, he's back. So yeah, I feel like I'm one of the like-minded, and I say like-minded in that I don't feel like the privatization of issuance of this is a good idea.
Yeah, Ben, I jumped into your host seat and asked him what's his involvement with the petition, and I'll answer the same question. I'm just part of the industry, and I think the people that service military moves, the majority of them are against this GHC contract, and so Jon and I are just two individuals that are on behalf of our industry and ourselves furthering the cause.
Yeah, so this whole thing started on change.org, right? I mean, a friend of the show, she's been on, Megan Harless, she's a military spouse, right? She started a petition on we're getting a lot of love right now for Oded replacing me here. Quirk, love you, man. But this whole thing started on change.org, where Megan Harless came out and basically started this petition. It got a ton of signatures for those people who didn't watch some previous episodes or aren't in the loop on this. And it kind of really got out and kind of got a life of its own. And so change, the higher ups, and maybe you can give me some background on this just so we can tee it up properly for people. But it seemed like a change had to happen, is the consensus. And so the change that was made, though, wasn't necessarily maybe the change that was needed. I mean, would you agree with that? What would you?
You're saying the change being the push to the household goods contract?
Right.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think so. One, I think Megan did a great job, and obviously there was a big issue there, and that's why they were able to get so much traction behind the change.org original one. And so I agree. And I think some of the things they put in place, the having the roundtable with so many people that are able to give feedback and be involved in that, I think she really got some traction there. And then I think since that original change.org came out, if you look at the satisfaction rate and how much it's climbed, I think it's climbed by 5 or 6 points since then. And I don't think that's the max. I think there's definitely some traction to be had there. And so that's, I think, one of the things that we would suggest is continue on the road that we're going. Give the roundtable a little more say so, and let's see where that gets us.
Yeah, and it's not just only the scores. It's also the last peak season was, by U.S. Transcom's own account, the quietest peak season that they've had in a while. So things have definitely moved in the right direction. And also this year, coming into this peak cycle, there's been a good amount of business rule changes to help promote higher quality service.
Well, what was interesting is two years ago, the peak season from 2 years ago was the peak season that kind of that made Megan create that change.org petition. It was a murderous peak season for everybody. I mean, it wasn't just the military. It was murder for the corporate accounts and for COD customers. I mean, everybody struggled, and I don't think it had anything necessarily to do with the management of the companies involved in the program. It was rough on everybody. It was just
Sure.
way more capacity was needed than was present in every sector, and then you look at last peak season and just the total amount of moves in the system. Again, when you look at corporate, when you look at COD, when you look at military, it was just a lot lighter. And so I think I will say this, and I'm not a huge fan of the current program and the way it's structured, and we can kind of get into that. But I think it has a lot more to do with demand than it has to do with the current management and the current companies involved, if that makes sense.
I would agree to a point, but I also think it comes down to people being willing and able to say no, right? And so you have to understand what your capacity is, and that you don't book over your capacity. And I think that's what got some of the moving companies in trouble, is that they kind of took more than they should have. And then, you can't provide quality service to everybody. And, and they deserve it, obviously.
I want to give some shout outs real quick to some people that are checking in here and kind of go through the comments. So Simon Johns from the UK, Great Britain. Hey, Simon. Appreciate you there. I'd love to know how the military moves people in the UK. I'd love to, just out of curiosity, how do other countries that have probably relatively large programs, obviously the U.S. military is the largest customer of household goods moving in the entire world at over $2 billion. Mm-hmm. But I'm always curious to see how other people manage large programs, to see what we can learn from them. Georgia stated award announcement is scheduled for 4:20. The last I heard it was 4:30. Appreciate you doing that. Let's see. Janet Turner, looking forward to hearing from us. I hope we're not disappointing, Janet. Hang in there. The second half is always better than the first half. Just telling you. My dad has a question. I always love when Dad hops in with a question. Has any comparison been done with the outcomes of privatization of correctional facilities? This is a great question. This is a bad question and a great question at the same time.
And with that, we'll turn it over to Oded.
All right. So, we haven't thought about the privatization of correctional facilities or comparing it, but we have thought about comparing it to the privatization or the single source of the military housing. Isn't that correct, John?
Yes, that was one of the examples. Not a great example as far as history and their transition of that. It did not go smoothly. There was not a lot of happy campers or members in that respect. And I couldn't tell you. How do, sir?
Hey, all right. So I'm going to start a GoFundMe for a Wi-Fi extender. You guys have been really great. I got mics, I got lights, but honestly, right now I need a Wi-Fi extender and a ventilator if shit goes sideways. So if you could just GoFundMe on those two things. But my dad's question about the privatization, right? So privatization has happened in the military. Base housing, right? Was privatized.
Absolutely.
The POV, the personally owned vehicle program, was sole sourced. The DTCI contract, which was the freight initiative, Defense Transportation Contracting Initiative, I want to say, from like 10 years ago, or maybe 15 by now, that was sole sourced as well. And all three of those, if you ask anybody that has any experience with them, will tell you they were complete dumpster fires. Base housing has been terrible. From what I hear. I've never slept in base housing, but base housing's been terrible. I mean, and Megan Harless herself, talks about that, and uses that.
I think they have better Wi-Fi.
All right, that's it. I'm going over to Elders Air Force Base right now. I'm broadcasting from there. You're right, John. You're right. But the POV contract, cars were getting lost all over the world. Nobody knew where it was. The POV contractor that won it tried to get out of it, and they told him, no, you can't. It was like Goodfellas when they locked the door at the bar and they're like, no, now you can't leave. I mean, that's basically what happened. Okay. So that wasn't a solution. And then the DTCI contract, which was widely regarded or heralded as a success that saved hundreds of millions of dollars for the for Transcom and for the military.
Oh dear. Oded, are you there?
So I think what he's going to say about the DTCI contract. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, bud.
All right. So the DCI contract, I think what he's going to say is that it only ended up being 25% of the market. So that program's still limping around, but I think it only covers 25% when it was originally supposed to cover 100%. So I don't know. In terms of privatization, most of the experiments of
I'm like yelling at my wife. I'm like, get off the Wi-Fi. She's like, I'm not on the Wi-Fi. Oh my gosh. So anyway, before I go out again, because this is like the best point I have, and then the rest of the show you guys can talk, okay? The DTCI contract, which was supposed to save hundreds of millions of dollars, a whistleblower complaint from Estes, the LTL company, came out saying that they were charging people, air freight prices for ground freight, and that none of the statistics or the data around the cost savings should be trusted. And I think it was the Inspector General came out with a report that said, not only do we not believe any of the data that's been reported on cost savings, we believe that this whole program should be disbanded because of corruption and whatnot. So
right.
there's no good examples that I can see or that anybody's ever shown me of how this actually works. So
I think, and that's the biggest frustration on my end, is that part of the requirement from the senators and congressmen that called for this was a GAO audit. And when they came back, there's nothing really for them to compare it to. And so they don't have a good answer for them. And so to me, what should be pivoted from there is, okay, we don't have a good answer from that. We can't give you good data. So we should do a test program, right? Rather than just putting all your chips in all at once and one full on and two no test program, slow it down. You know, let's make sure this is the right answer before you get in there and you really have a company that's too big to fail. I mean, you talked about them, you know, the contractor on the POV side trying to get out. This is such a much bigger deal, and we're not talking about automobiles here, right? It always gets more personal when you're talking about people's belongings.
yeah, I mean, what happens when the contractor who, you know, I mean, what happens when they fail or it's worse than you know, 2 summers ago or whatever, and you've already the toothpaste is out of the tube. You know, you've blown up the infrastructure, and you can't just flip a switch and go back. Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
We lost him again. So the toothpaste is out of the tube and we can't go back. And you're right. I think once we go, once a GHC gets awarded and implemented, there, you know, and all the structures that are in place right now on the GIPSO level have been kind of destroyed, there's no going back. Would you agree there, John?
I would. And so I would just say my biggest call would be get more information, do a test program, and I would say get more people involved. I mean, they have this roundtable for a reason, right? You utilize these people that have really, one, know the program, and two, have physically gone through this on a regular basis. I think when you get to a certain level, you kind of forget about the grind that your members and your people are going through. I mean, if you ask me to go load a truck today, I'm going to forget how long ago it took me to load a truck and to empathize with that level. And so I think they really need feedback from those that are in that, whether it's a military member, whether it's military spouses. And quite honestly, the spouses are the ones that bear the brunt. You know, they're the ones that are there supervising. They're the ones with the kids in the transition. And so I would say we definitely need to have some more time and get more feedback and go from there.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in situations like this, it's important to talk about why we're actually on Ben's Love and Relo podcast. And that's to talk about this actual petition, right? And a call to action to the people that are watching this, a lot of them being in the moving and storage industry. So what are our goals here with this petition, John, as an industry?
It's to call attention to the fact that they're trying to do too much too fast. And so part of that is this petition that I think it has over about 2,800, 2,900 currently people signed on. But the original change.org signature had over 100,000. And so that's what we need. We need a lot more people that are willing to sign on. And it's not signing on to say, look, you know, we need to put this industry on its head. It's signing on to say, look, we need to look closer at this. And that's what's going to get the attention of the senators and congressmen that are on the House Armed Services Committee, Senate Armed Services Committee, that are really truly signing on to fund this and commit to this and just kind of call attention to it.
If people want to sign, if people want to sign, thank you, Oded. If people want to sign the petition, where do they go? How do they sign it?
There's a change.org link. I don't know. Do you have that, Ben?
I do.
Okay, so maybe you can.
I'll post it in the comments here. I think it's also in the description, but I'll post it in the comments as well.
Right. So there's a short video that's tied to that, but then there's also the verbiage and who's been copied on that as far as who we want notified. And really, it's tied to the House Armed Services Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee, all senators and congressmen that serve on those committees, that we just want to make sure they understand the full breadth of what they're allowing to happen, so to speak.
Yeah, and we're trying to match 100,000 petition signings that, you know, Megan Harless, her petition that started this. So we need you, if you're listening right now, you know, spread this within your social network and let's get this up to 100,000 signatures. I think we can do it.
Yeah, I think it would have huge implications of other people just calling attention to it and being able to have those conversations. When I've gone up to D.C. to talk to the different senators and congressmen that are tied to this, they hear it, but I don't think they fully understand. They're kind of taking the meeting, but they don't fully understand the impact of what could happen.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people in the comment section that we can see, like Blake Lothian, who I know from TMM. If GHC happens, many mom and pop agents within the country will not survive long enough for it to fail. I think that's one of the main concerns, is that I think the independent small movers that currently do business directly with the government might be squeezed out of this whole GHC single contract situation. Wouldn't you agree?
I would say that there's so many unknowns, it's ridiculous, right? We don't know which way it could turn because we've never done this before. Just like we're in unknown times with the COVID-19, we're in unknown times with the GHC. And by the way, the timing couldn't be worse, right? You're gonna award a contract when we're under a current stop order. You're gonna take away mom and dad's business or brother's business or whoever's business. You're gonna take away that business while none of us can work to begin with. I think that's pretty heartless.
I agree with you. There are a lot of shortcomings of the current program. One of them is technology. For example, Georgia is saying, well, the current technology DPS isn't good. Maybe with GHC we'll get something better. What do you have to say about that?
I think there's no doubt. It's kind of hard to say we're not going to get something better than DPS, right? No one's going to raise their hand and say, I want more of the same, right? Because it's pretty frustrating, tons of downtime, requires tons of maintenance, and so it's ridiculous. I get that there's lots of other options other than DPS, but you don't need to give the whole program to one giant company to get better software, right? They can research that to begin with, but it goes back to what do we know about it? We don't know, right? And it will be truly too big to fail. Once they destroy all the infrastructure and they let go of a lot of the people they have tied to this in the current program, they're not going to have another option.
We've got a lot of comments coming in before my world ends for the 8th time. I want to read some of these because they are truly good here. I got somebody that text that messaged me privately. So I'm assuming he wants to remain anonymous. Hey, Ben, I'm watching. My opinion is that the government wants a singular manager to handle everything. Give a block for X, let JLL or another handle everything else. Accountability goes to one, cuts out so many needs. Yeah, I think part of this is Transcom's just tired of getting complained to. They're just tired of getting dragged around, dragged through and talked about how bad they are doing their job. And they're like, you know what? Then you do it. We don't want it on our desk ever again, And I think part of that's out of like spite, It's like, be careful what you wish for. Here you go.
Right.
Terry Head, hello, Ben and John. Looking forward to the discussion, listening from Virginia. Terry, I think it's interesting that you omitted Oded. Perhaps that was early in the broadcast.
I wasn't on at the beginning.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Simon Johns, we are starting chronologically, so that is fair. Simon Johns, hi from the UK, Aqua Moving Services and Clearview Relocation. Jonathan Farmer, hello, Ben and John. Again, omitting Oded. MCS Creating Solutions, listening from Dallas.
It's okay.
In fairness, Oded is the Steve Martin of Love and Relo because he's been on more times than anybody. So... Jake Lowry, hey Ben, ready to hear everyone's thoughts in Kansas City. Hey Jake. Kathleen Baker, hi from Dallas. Simon Johns, Ben is lost for words. That is a first.
Yeah, I agree.
My computer's got the COVID. Sean Ireland, hey guys, tuning in from Dallas, Texas. Sandra Clary, hi all. She says, when are you going to do a Ben and Dad show? She wants my dad on.
Nice.
Interesting. That could be fun, right? Cheap guests.
That'd be really fun.
Yeah. Ross Greenstein, hi from Dallas, and then Eric Masadi. I could use a good quote from one or two. My offer is nothing. So I think he wants a quote. Maybe a quote on the. I don't know what he wants to quote. Eric, let me know what you want to quote about. But yeah, let's go through here and on. We got some good points actually coming in here on Facebook as well, and I'll let you guys speak to this one. Okay, Steve from the California Moving Storage Association says all service providers should be aware of PPA hashtag 20-0074 out today, 10% adjustment in recognition of the burden of service during the stop movement order. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so there's additional guidance, a lot of it coming from van lines or management companies. But what the military is trying to do is help a small moving company, any moving company, anybody that's performed a job during this period. You're allowed to bill them under a miscellaneous item code for 10% above the services. And the idea is that the money goes directly to the service provider. They don't want it to go on anybody else.
So what's interesting about this is I saw a memo out from a move management company, military move management company. Well, let me go back. So PPA is there was like 10 articles or 11 articles in this document, this memo that came out, paragraphs, and paragraph 8 said that this has to go 100% of this goes to the service providers doing the work. They were specific about this. Yeah. And then I see guidance that comes out from a military move management company that basically says your comp schedule will be increased 10%. Well, there's margin on those items. So 100% is not going to the service provider. It's going through 10%. It's a 10% increase, not 100% to the service provider. And I think that this is the crux of one of the major issues that we're seeing with the global household goods contract as well, is that there's a disconnect, or there is a lot of middlemen in the process who are extracting revenue but not necessarily adding commensurate value. And I think that this is the onus of the argument that Megan's group had.
Yeah, so to get into that, I would say, one, shame on them, right? Especially during these times. But I'm talking about the 10%, the 100%. I think they could get in trouble for that. So whoever that was really needs to be careful. But to the point, it's not at no cost to them, right? They have to go in and rebuild these jobs. To what degree, I don't know. There's research. There's some, there's definitely a cost involved in that.
Sure.
But on the flip side, they add a ton of value. I think in many meetings I've had with Transcom, and not just me personally, one-on-ones during bid processes, but I feel like they love to beat up on the move management companies. But quite honestly, they're the most sophisticated process that we have that helps Pete go smoothly, right? Now, are they taking too much? That's a conversation to have. But quite frankly, I point back to the roundtable. Let's go back and let's let the industry fix it if that's the case. But they're the reason that help us. And I'm saying that's a big generalization. There are definitely some bad actors out there, right? Anyone that is not providing a great service for the member, they need to be, poked with a hot iron. So I'm not protecting everybody, but I'm saying those that are really the best golden standard, so to speak, need to have that respect. And I feel like many times during meetings, we kind of hate on them in general.
Let me also add something to Steve's point here. It should be noted that these are shipments that occurred during the stop movement order, but also shipments that were pulled back. So you're getting paid 10% of shipments that never moved. And I think that adds a lot of questions. Are we doing billing off the DPS weight? What are we doing here? So it's good. And also, so for example, if you were assigned DA or hauler or OA, how is the revenue split going to look? So it's going to be interesting.
That's interesting too, because I've heard a lot of drivers complain about, getting to a pickup that's scheduled to find out that they canceled the order, right? And I've seen drivers say, well, gosh, there's no cancellation, but I spent all this gas getting here. I got a helper that wants to get paid. I got, expense. I've got opportunity costs because now I got a hole in my wagon that I can't fill, et cetera, et cetera, And I find this interesting because basically what the DoD has done is set a little bit of a precedence. Now it's an emergency precedence, but they set a little bit of a precedence for a cancellation fee of 10%. And the strain, they've acknowledged the operational hardship that's created by cancellations. And I now they may call it stimulus, right? But
Right.
I kind of think it's an interesting idea to look at a cancellation rate, because I'll tell you what, it's not something that we assess in the corporate environment. It's not something, to my knowledge, that's been assessed in the DoD environment. And frankly, most reputable movers don't even charge them on their COD moves. Now, there's non-refundable deposits that a lot of internet brokers use, but I find it interesting.
Right. I got to tell you, as a moving company, multiple locations, I would let them keep their 10% to get starting faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
News came out that Esper potentially extended the stop order. And I think what they're saying is, and this is my Cliff Notes version, I don't know the actual, because it literally happened, I think it happened 30 minutes before we went on. But I think what they're saying is essentially it's a moving target at this point.
Now, could it move out, but could it also move in?
I think it's definitely going to fluctuate, and this is personal opinion, nothing to base this on. But I got to think it's probably going to be based on, one, where we are as a country, right? Whether or not more states are opening up. I can't imagine where you're going to have 20 to 30 to 50 cities that are opening up and moving around more freely, and yet the military is still going to be, holding on to the stop order. So I would think that it could probably go in either direction, especially because, my understanding is Trump controls this more than he controls anything else.
Right. And what I've been going around and talking to a lot of my RMC partners, my corporate client partners, and asking them what they're seeing and when do they think we're going to, start moving again. I mean, because it's hit the, it hasn't gone to zero, but it's hit the corporate side, 60 to 80%, depending on 60 to 90%, depending on who you talk to, and depending on what industry their clients are in, which is actually interesting because that's about what the military is moving also, because they're still moving, what, 20%, 25%, something like that, would you say, John, Oded? Is that about right?
Yeah, it depends on the service, really.
Mm-hmm. And they're saying, June, really. And the stop order was until what, May 31st? Is that correct, DOD?
May 25th.
May 25th. Okay.
So here's one thing I want to point out. This is almost, I don't want to say worse, because some business is good, but if you're trying to move 25% of the shipments across the U.S., you don't have full trucks anymore.
That's
right?
It's true.
You have 100% insurance, 100% fuel. Your labor obviously varies depending on the volume, but it makes it much, much tougher to put loads together, and especially return loads.
Yeah, great point. Great point. I want to check in with some of our LinkedIn folks here. Got a bunch of people watching us on LinkedIn. Got a bunch of people here on Facebook as well, and we got some great comments we're going to show as well from there. Doug Powers says, "Whoever gets the award will need partners. COVID-19 may have an impact on the award." Are we hearing that the COVID-19 crisis is having an impact on the award or the date of award at all?
So
common sense. Go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Oded.
I would say common sense, and everybody in the industry thinks yes, but the military has been very, very strong in saying no.
So Ben,
Get that, Ben?
I'm going to say that.
Just looking. John, are you there?
Yeah, John.
So,
go ahead.
What we've heard is that no, there's been no delay. That there's supposedly the award supposed to happen on the 30th. We said this earlier when you kind of checked out for a second, but we were saying that it's pretty heartless that they're going to push forward with this when we're under a current stop order. And I mean, I'm not judging anybody, but I'm just saying in general that is really frustrating. That we're sitting here paying people really wanting to work, and especially people. Yeah, I would just say, without getting into details, it's gut wrenching that a lot of the control in business can be taken away from you like that.
That goes to Blake's comment here. If the global household goods contract happens, many mom and pop agents within the country will not survive long enough for it to fail. They will be closed by that time. What do you guys think about that? About the cash flow for smaller agents or for even bigger agents? I mean, we've seen big moving companies go out of business too.
I think it can go both ways. Some of the larger agents tend to have more debt, so that can be more burdensome. But I think it's totally accurate for everybody. If we don't have a decent peak this year, it's going to be tragic to our industry as a whole. And it's not just going to be tragic to the military side; it's going to be tragic to both. We're talking about going through a period. You're talking about on the COD and national account side, where it's not going to rebound right off the bat either. I mean, companies they're essentially adjusting how they're doing business. And so I think we're all going to go through a very big transition. And if GHC is awarded, it just takes it to another level of shift. And then I've mentioned this before, there's also going to be a credit crunch. I mean, think about the companies that are not awarded the GHC. Suddenly you're going to be worried about getting paid, right? And even if it's disputed and that goes on for a while, I think small companies cannot tolerate and or last out 30, 60, 90, 120 day terms on jobs that they've paid labor and fuel and everything else for the very beginning. And so that's another reason they need to postpone the award of peak or after peak, is because this is already hard enough.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point. Georgia makes a note here. Domestic shipments would start to move February 2021 if GHC was awarded according to the current timelines. Steve from California says the single source will provide even less opportunity for service provider input, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, all these hot washes and PPFs and personal property forums and there won't be any of that. Why would there have to? There's no need for accountability. It's a private company. Now they may have a supplier. Whoever wins it might have a supplier forum, for movers to come out and talk about how great they are and get beat up about their quality scores. But it's not going to be a dialogue where they sit and take our feedback and we stand up and pass the mic around and Joel Summers says something crazy and Chuck White challenges a general, and that kind of stuff. So you guys know, Oded knows what I'm talking about.
I do.
So, but yeah. So I wonder about that.
Well, and tell me this, the frustrating part for me is if there's an issue with the awarding company, right? The company that's awarded the GHC contract, if I'm working for them, am I going to stand up and raise issues?
No.
That's 100% where my bread is buttered at this point, right? And so where is the encouragement to get better going to come from?
Right. It's not.
And Ben, let me just add something to that. For example, Blake works for a large military move management company. And John and I, most moving companies in the military moving industry are partnered up and working with these companies. And these are not bad companies. These are good companies, and they're the main bidders. I mean, out of the 4 main bids, you have basically the top 3 move management companies among them. And so our beef or our complaint is not with them. They're trying to take advantage of the opportunity they have. But even a lot of people within these organizations are against the GHC. So just take that into consideration.
Yeah. So I think, and I'm going to bring, let me get through these comments real quick. And then I want to bring up a question about alternatives. So if this petition takes off, right, and people sign it, which, if you're watching this now.
When the petition takes off.
When the petition takes off and when everybody that's watching this currently signs it, you should get at least another 20 signatures. Then what does it look like going forward? And what's the next chapter here in this kind of reform thing? I want to read a couple more comments here. Tony Bonsamino. Hey guys, hope someone can figure out how to get this on the media. You guys thought about how to get this on the media? And anybody thought about that?
I think Military Times knows about it. Whether or not they choose to run with it, I don't know. We're trying some other things, but yeah, I mean, this is when this first came out. This is not my forte. You know, I know how to move. I know how to manage companies. Yeah, I'm not the tech and or PR guy, and so I think this is catching. It has caught us flat-footed for the last year and a half, and so I think we're definitely rebounding, and we'll do what we can. But I don't know where that would come from, short of IAM and or AMSA.
Well, Megan, Megan is a media darling. She's been quite, out front with all these things, and she was on this show, and she's been on some other fantastic shows, and she's a great champion for military spouses. And she actually chimes in here. Military.com knows of the petition as well. It's a matter of time, but the question is, do we have time, right? Because if this thing's going to get awarded in 16 days, it really does require a groundswell of support, and people like Megan. I'd also like to submit, Tony, that I am also the media, so it has gotten picked up by the media.
Hello.
I know. I've definitely drawn a Nielsen rating of 0.000002 right now, so that's fantastic. Going on to another comment here, Yaron from Flat Rate, New York. Go Oded. Rory Ramirez, hello everyone from Mini Moves in Broadview, Illinois. Yeah, Yaron, he's married. All right. Gotti business. How does Oded get on your show again and again? Is he a sponsor?
That's a good question.
It's the winning personality.
Gotti, that's a fantastic question. Not everybody that appears on the show is a sponsor. It's not a requirement, nor does sponsorship get you on the show. But if Relocation Insurance would like to sponsor the show, I'd be glad to take the money. I could use a Wi-Fi extender.
I was about to say, or maybe a T1.
Yeah. I got to get off this. I'm getting this free AOL right now, and I got to do better. So let's see here. Steve has another comment here. John's comment about service providers' willingness to complain to those who provide business speaks to the nonsense of the executive working group. Interesting comment.
Yeah.
I'd love any comment with nonsense in it. Well, I take the military. I mean, the military is the largest client in the world, but the second, third, fourth largest clients, to my knowledge, are relocation management companies. And so then I compare this to when I go to conferences that they hold, right? And to your point, you're not like overtly critical. You're not standing up and saying your move team is a bunch of idiots and they don't know how to give out shipments and whatever. Because I mean, to your point, that's stupid. You don't criticize your customer. But because the military's program is run by the government, we as taxpayers and businesses that pay taxes and support citizens and constituents of congressmen out there do have an open dialogue. In fact, I've even seen some the associations have sued the military for back pay or for other things that weren't that were due to their membership, which is something you would never consider doing with a private company. I mean, to sue them and then to continue doing business is a foreign concept. So yeah, I wonder what that dialogue would be like. Now I want to take these comments aside, and I want to ask you something, because there was a reason that this original petition that kind of was started, by a military spouse, by Megan, that got a lot of traction, that then was, went to Congress and went to, U.S. Transcom and decided something's got to be done. I mean, that's kind of the way I was told to me. So this is what they came up with, the Global Household Goods Contract. And I think everybody read the solicitation and they're saying, yeah, but what about this? But what about transparency? But what about what's an outlook like? How do we unwind it if it's not right? And what about, the service provider that's actually doing the work and the drivers, et cetera, and the mom and pops and all this stuff. But there are still problems with the existing program. Sure. So my question is, how do you, if the Global Household Goods Contract goes away, what does reform look like?
So I would say, one, we don't know. because just like the global household goods contract, it's not perfect. And our current program is not perfect. It's really good. I don't know any other program that has the satisfaction rating that the moving program does with the DoD, but it can definitely be improved upon. And I think it starts with roundtable. You have to bring in the people that are actually participating in the program and going through the grind and get their feedback on options on what to do. I think Transcom has implemented some of those, and as a moving industry, I think for a long time we've kind of had this is the way we do it mentality, and so I think we need to be more flexible. We need to know that what they're saying has value and that we're going to have to adjust, right?
Ben,
So
Ben
sorry,
it's not. Thanks, John. It's not about what's going to happen. It's what's currently happening. There are new business rules for this cycle that involve inconvenience claims. It involves automatic reways. There's a lot of changes that are already happening to improve the system, coming off of the best peak season that it has happened in a decade. So this is definitely not the right time to blow it up.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate. I think that there's problems with the program. I think that you have a ton of TSPs, but they're being controlled by only several move management companies, and there becomes a lot of fingers in the pie and a lot of middlemen that the service members would say, my shipment is given to this company, and they might have went out of business when I look them up on Google, and they're being managed by this company. And then when I want to know where my stuff is, I have to call this company. And it's all very confusing. I can't find the Yelp ratings for any of them. And I don't know who I'm really dealing with. And that's a problem to people, especially in this age of transparency, right? I mean, gosh, So how do we solve for some of that lack of transparency and accountability?
So I would say I think that they've already made some changes, right? They're able to cancel a shipment and go in and rebook under a different TSP. I don't know what that process identically looks like. I think it's very troublesome in peak because we all know what happens during peak and that the amount of volume that gets poured on all at once. But I would say that small option exists already. But the other thing, I think that under our current program, what they were moving towards was having the right phone number listed with a TSP that's being managed. That puts them directly in contact with the management company that would know exactly, and it would clear up quite a few lines of communication. I think there's been some junk in between that could be cleared out like that would very much streamline that process.
So these are very tactical things that, frankly, are just, yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. The other thing that I think is interesting is every year the satisfaction scores seem to trend up. And yet we have, and not every year is a bad season. I mean, we talked about this. Last year was pretty good. The year before that was horrific. The year before that might have been okay. I don't really know. I don't remember all the years, right? But Megan's got
pull up Megan's comment.
Megan's got some good
there.
comments. She's talking about customer satisfaction rates. So she says the satisfaction rating is only based off of 25 to 30% of customers who fill out the survey. Filling out the survey has been a pain point in the program, and a bigger issue should be looking at why are the other 70% not filling it out. Great point. She goes on to say, it needs implementing the same standards from OCONUS, which means outside of continental United States or overseas market, to the CONUS market within the United States. Having 5 different companies listed on my email from DPS is where confusion comes from. Great point.
Absolutely. There needs to be a single point of contact is what Megan is saying.
And
the satisfaction score, go ahead.
I would go back to why aren't we implementing more of her comments into our decision making? She is one of the ones that's out there right now, right? I mean, that's exactly what we need to know. Hey, I mean, it's kind of like if you're AT&T, for example, right? They're going to go to their employees and say, hey, if we're going to change our relocation program, what do you need to see? Where are your pain points? and then they implement them fairly quickly. That's what we need to be doing to the current program.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And actually, we talk about who's a part of the discussion, and Steve brings up, again, because Steve is the president of the California Moving and Storage Association, the fact that the associations are not a part of these discussions. Now, some people will
They've
say,
been shut out.
some people, well, but why, right? I mean, some people might say that associations weren't doing enough early on to be proactive and taking this feedback and actually coming up with solutions, but we're instead say, what do you mean there's not a problem? Scores are going great and everything's wonderful. And so Transcom might have said, well, you know what? We don't think you're really productive member of this conversation, therefore you're not going to be involved in it because you're just going to try to block it. So I think there's been a breakdown in the communication there that's obviously necessary in order to get somewhere. And here we are with a high degree of urgency because there's a ticking time bomb right here that we're dealing with, and now we're like, oh crap, we got all these solutions, but we have to take some ownership here and say we need to be more proactive and ahead of things and offering solutions, so there's a high degree of confidence in our customer, US Transcom, that we're going to solve these things ourselves. That's just my opinion.
But Ben, here's the thing. When we're talking about outsourcing, well, let's outsource what needs to be outsourced. Right now, we're not very good about getting involved with the survey score. So why doesn't the military outsource that program? Have, a third-party company come in and make sure that all the military service members are surveyed so we can get a better idea of what's going on. There's a better way of attacking the individual problems than just throwing it all out and going into a system where one party has all the control.
Yeah, and to echo that, I think that is part of the program that in the new system, what they're proposing is that the surveys would be outsourced to a third-party company, and that's coming. But I would say the implementation of this roundtable, I'm reading this, spouse service members are not either. Yeah, so
an executive working group
on the roundtable. We need the associations on the roundtable as well, because every moving company needs to be represented, not just the biggest and the loudest, right? I mean, we're talking about capacity. You may hate the guy across the street that steals, quote unquote, some of your business, but during peak, we can't survive without him, right? We all don't move all the business. It takes the village, and we need the village to stick around for next season. Otherwise, we're all going to be in a world of hurt.
So if the associations are in the executive working group, and the spouses whose complaints started this process aren't on the working group, and the moving companies aren't on the working group, then who's
there
working?
Are some moving companies that are in the working group. There are, yes.
Okay. And Steve corrects me. He says we're willing to address problems with Transcom. Hey, I appreciate being corrected. I'm sometimes wrong. I have off-base opinions. Terry,
the associations have been great throughout the entire process. Ben, IM has been very vocal. We appreciate that. IM has been very strong in advocating for the movers, in this GHC process. I mean, AMSA has taken more of a sidelines approach to it, and AMSA and Chuck White have been out in front, fighting the battle, which is what this petition is all about. It's about taking another actionable step to help change what we see as a bad decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think advocating for the movers, though, that's their job, right? Associations is to advocate for their movers, their constituents. But I think what they were trying to solve is the problems that the spouses were having. And so I think advocacy for the spouses was maybe an opportunity that could have been adopted earlier.
No, but we agree on that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that GHC, even if you talk with Megan, who started this, this process, I don't think GHC was her intended outcome.
Right.
So I mean, that's really why we're banding together as an industry to try to stop this, because ultimately we believe it's best for us, but it's also best for the service members that we serve.
Well, and you're seeing a lot of comments on the petition. So if people go on the petition, they can see reasons you should sign the petition. And there's actually a lot of comments, even from like a naval commander was commenting about what a great job movers have done with his taxidermy and how he thinks it'd be a shame. I mean, but this is people's real stuff. This is what people care about, right?
Right.
And how he thinks it would be a shame if they were to blow the whole thing up because, anyway. So my dad also said he signed the petition. He hopes it wasn't some communist party thing. So hopefully he's not now on the red list. My dad. All right. Terry Head says U.S. Transcom will want to announce award while Congress is focused elsewhere and before the election and a possible change in administration that might be more small business friendly. Interesting.
That's a good point.
Jamie Masser, go ahead.
That brings up a point right now. We're in a situation where all the funding is bent towards SBA, and yet at the same time, that's one hand, and the other hand is saying, okay, let's take all this business and give it to one person.
Give it to one big mega
That's
contractor.
actually a really good point, John.
Right. Jamie Massler, hi guys from Mississippi. Rory Ramirez, actually, he just outed me. He said the reason Oded comes on the show is because it's the bottles of bourbon he sends me, which is actually true. So if you want to be on the show, yeah. So John, I expect a bottle of bourbon. I forgot to mention that in the writer.
Jim Beam White Label headed your way.
Nice, thanks. James Grady, always learn so much listening to you guys. Great conversation. Victoria McCullough, hi Ben. Hey Victoria. Tony Bonsamino, the solicitation for the customer surveys outsourcing was killed off or put on hold. I think the survey thing needs to be looked at though, because you got 25 to 30%. I know I'll say for myself, when I managed a scat code in a previous life, we would gate responses. We would do gating or score chasing to make sure that we had the best scores, coming back, because the minimum performance standard was in the 80s. And if you're under the 80s, you're dead. You're in non-use. You're done. Right. You're donezo, right? So I mean, we would do stuff like that, and if every year the scores keep getting better, but the anecdotal feedback you get is mixed, you have to sometimes question the validity of those results. So I think the survey is important, John.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? In the national account world, what is that percentage of surveys?
It tends to be about 35%.
So it's about the same.
Similar, same ballpark. Mm-hmm. And anybody that showed a 50% return rate, I would question if they were encouraging positives, or if they showed something below that number, I would question if they were suppressing, using gift cards, or, hey, I heard your lamp was broke. How about I buy you a bed and don't do the survey? So I mean, you always got to watch that too. And people think that data doesn't lie, but it can be manipulated. So,
sure.
And I think that's where anecdotal feedback is important as well. So I think we're coming to our time here, and I think the questions and the comments have kind of slowed a little bit. But I wanted to ask you both and give you just both a minute for a final word. What would you like to share with people that are watching right now?
I'll go first, John. I want to call to action here. I want people that feel strongly about the GHC to not only go in and sign the petition, but share it with your social networks. Get your friends to share it with their social networks. And let's get this thing viral, because I can promise you one thing. If we get this to 100,000 plus votes, our voice will be heard. And it's our job to get it to that point. So I'm fully confident that we'll be able to do it, but we can't do it without you. So please join our effort.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Oded. It's as serious as this can be for our industry, right? There is no greater time than we are in right now. And so the same thing, share it with everybody that you know. And for those in the military, and I think Megan has kind of made this clear, that they need to be in the driver's seat. And this is a way for them not only to not have it to one person that's going to be harder and harder to figure out. I say person, but I mean company, right? One large contractor, but also a way to craft this in such a way that we have a roundtable where they get more feedback. I can't think of any of us in the moving industry that would want to say, look, we don't want to talk to the people that we're serving, right? We want to get their feedback. That's really what we need to hear. And that's what we're after, quite honestly.
Well, you're getting people right now that are saying they just signed the petition. John Marsh just signed the petition. Thanks for the info, fellas. Jason Rollins, very informative. Thank you all. Matthew Nee says, hey, Ben, the biggest overlooked, simplest facts, the massive amount of service failures that currently exist are going to increase. There's no way one carrier can be awarded this and moving to be held to a level consistent enough to be satisfactory. Even the largest van lines who are even partnering up on this, which is so interesting, are still not going to, maybe half of the volume would be able to be handled by the two or three largest.
Right,
van
half
lines
of the
maybe.
volume during the summer, but what happens during the winter when they can take all of it, and us, independents and people that have been serving the military for years can't survive.
Yep. Excellent points here. Lynn Greenberg says hi. So anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. I would say to take a look at that petition, sign that if that's on your heart. I do think that the way we're, I think where DP3 is right now, I think there does need to be some changes. I think there needs to be some reform to it. There needs to be elements and tweaks made that we talked about, like the phone numbers and the surveys and some things like that. But I think to start over with one winner-take-all situation is going to create more problems than it's going to solve. And so I'd encourage people to take a look at that petition. The link is in the comments. It's also in the show description as well. Let's see here. Yep.
Ben, are you a signator to the petition?
I am a signator.
Thank you.
And what people don't realize is that once you sign the petition, you actually get a bottle of bourbon from Oded Carmi. So
It's true.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, there's that.
Please put your address.
There's that.
But in all seriousness, the petition, once you sign it, does ask you if you want to donate money. This is not something you have to pay money for. No, monetary involvement is expected or requested. Just sign it and get your friends to sign it. That's the only thing we are asking for.
And share it on social.
Does not come to anybody but change.org. So I would not suggest doing that.
Yeah, they do hit you up with a donation, which is really weird at the end. But instead of that, do the share thing. You can share it on your Facebook page, and that's probably the best thing to do. So without further ado, I actually have another show in 2 hours with somebody in China. So, but I'm happy I could slot you guys in right now.
From Wuhan, right?
Yeah, from
time, brother. This is great.
Interior China. Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, Oded. Thank you, everybody that's watching. Appreciate you very much. We have a full schedule this week.
Love
I encourage
you guys.
everybody
Thank you.
to tune in. Also, if you're watching this, please subscribe on YouTube. Please subscribe on Facebook, and that'll let you know next time we're doing a show, which will be in 2 hours.